My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Hello and welcome to Islanders Anxiety from Lighthouse Hockey and the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Dan Saracini. Joining me on this Sunday afternoon via Zencaster is my friend Michael Leboff. And Mike, we knew the Islanders were going to be in tough with 3 games against some pretty stiff competition, some of the better teams in the NHL. They came away with 1 win and 2 losses in which they fought pretty hard for about half the game until the wheels sort of came off. And after a really hot January, they hit the Four Nations face-off break in more or less the same spot they were before that hot January. So has that spurt, that hot streak that they had where they went 9-2 in January and left them now 4 points out of the final playoff spot in the East, has that changed your thinking about this team at all as they head into the break that seemed to be kind of like the unofficial take a breath point in the season this year?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, I guess you come to this podcast for a variety of different reasons, and the top of the list maybe would be an analogy to cricket. And in Test cricket, the 5-day version of cricket, there's a saying, like, the most exciting thing about a Test cricket match is when after day 4, all 4 results are possible. Because after a Test cricket match, there's 4 ways the match can end. Team A wins, Team B wins, it's a draw, which is like time runs out, or the 4th result, which is very rare, is a tie. The 2 teams score the exact amount of the exact same amount of runs, which basically never happens. But what the point is that the cricket world gets really excited because it's not all that common that you go to sleep after 4 days of playing and you wake up the next morning and all 4 results are possible. And that's how I feel about the Islanders season right now, right? We're at this break. It's been a grueling 55 game stretch. It's been up and down. We've been sitting out there in the sun baking like these cricketers, blood, sweat, and tears. 8 hours out there in the West Australian sun, or in South Africa or Pakistan or India in the subcontinent. And we're going to bed after day 4, and any result is possible here. The Islanders could go on, continue to. They were 11-5, I think, over the last 16 games. They can keep playing at that clip, make the playoffs. They could flame out and miss the playoffs. They could come really close and miss by a point, or things could just go completely, off the rails in one way or another. And I don't think there's one right or wrong way to think about it. I know there's a lot of people out there who think it's the best possible situation for the Islanders is for them to flame out and trade away anything that's not bolted to the floor, like Brock Nelson and Colin Palmieri and now Noah Dobson, Anders Lee, etc. And I do think what we do and makes this podcast a little different from most sports podcasts is we never say the Islanders should do this, like they should do this, and because it doesn't matter what we think. We're here to just roll with it as it comes. And if you think the Islanders should do that, go right ahead. Or if you're someone who thinks the Islanders should hold on to everyone and maybe buy at the deadline, go for it. But I think at this junction, there's arguments to be made for all of it. There's arguments to be made that the Islanders should stick to it. Like they played really well for this stretch. They ran out of gas, but it's not even that they ran out of gas. Look at who played last night, right? It's not. The Islanders started this month pretty healthy, and they ended the month with Tony DeAngelo, Scott Perunovich,
Adam
Boquist, and Dennis Cholowski on their blue line. And I use Dennis Cholowski very
I was gonna say barely
air quotes because he barely played the past 2 games, but and Mark Gatcomb is playing, and it's not where the backup goalie for the last week and a half or whatever it's been Jacob Skarek. And before that it was Marcus Hogberg. So it's the team has played well enough despite these being smited by the hockey gods to give you the optimism if you want to be an optimist. Or you could say they gave it a valiant effort, but they've run out of track here. It doesn't matter. And I guess that it is exciting that at this junction, all the results are possible. It beats the hell out of the Islanders being 12 points out of a playoff race like they were, quite a bit during our lifetime, and being like, well, can't wait for the trade deadline to see what they can get for player X and be underwhelmed. So there is exciting, and I'm excited to take 2 weeks off from it and kind of just see what happens.
Yeah, as I told some friends of mine regarding the recent trade rumors, which we're going to talk all about in the second half of this episode, there's no point in trying to figure out what the Islanders are going to do. They're going to do whatever they're going to do, or they're not going to do whatever they're not going to do. And I've been trying for 40 years to figure them out, and I have not successfully ever done that. So there's no point in trying to do that. And this is almost like the perfect test case scenario where you could make a case very easily that they have plenty of runway to make the playoffs, and it's just going to take, wins, X number of wins in X amount of games to get in there. Or you can make the even easier case that they're done. They should just trade whoever they can, recoup some assets, and try again next year and get younger, faster, get some draft picks going. All of that makes sense. They could squeak into the playoffs on the last day of the season, right? Even after trading, they could trade everybody and still squeak into the playoffs on the last day of the season, or they could trade nobody and squeak into the playoffs on the last day of the season. Like, there really is a wealth of possibilities here, which on one hand is exciting, and on the other hand is a little bit mad. But that's sort of, I guess, Islanders hockey in a nutshell. We're going to cover these last 3 games. We're going to talk about the trade rumors. yes, we're going to talk very, very briefly about the Four Nations face-off, very, very briefly. So in case if you blink and skip the ads, you might miss it, but we'll get there and see what else comes up because, again, we got a 2-week break, so we might as well clear the decks a little bit. In the meantime, reminder that we are on Patreon, patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Membership gets you ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, and a whole lot more. We're going to have a mailbag coming out this week. We're going to have a Country Club Atmosphere coming out next week. We've got all kinds of stuff happening even during the break. So sign up and whenever you can, patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety, or you can just join for free too. Okay, let's talk about these 3 games. The last 2 we can kind of lump in, I think, together because they were both very similar. And I want to start with the winning game, the one they won this week, which was the 2-1 win over Vegas. Really good game, I thought, all over, although you could make the case that Ilya Sorokin absolutely stole that game. It was pretty even to start out with. Beautiful goal by Bo Horvat to cross in front of the net. Great pass by Adam Pelech. Horvat crosses in front of the net, goes 5-hole, 1-0. Seemed to have a big celebration. Just doesn't like Bo really that often, but it was good. Second period, shots are 15-4 Vegas, and Sorokin just basically stood on his head. It was basically all Vegas again in the third period. Brandon Saad, who just, of course, once I realized he was there and it was like his third game and he hadn't scored yet for Vegas, I was like, all right, he's getting a goal tonight. And sure enough, there it was. He tied the game. But then Brock Nelson got a great tip on an Alex Romanov shot, made it 2-1. Vegas pushed. The Islanders couldn't clear the zone, but Sorokin was huge. Eventually, he ended up getting 33 saves. Felt like a lot more than that, but he was excellent. Ilya Samsonov only made 12. He was barely tested. Shots were 34-14 in favor of the Golden Knights. But, I mean, this was very much in line with the games that the Islanders had played recently. Yeah, they were coming off the loss for Florida, against Florida, which we all kind of understood. But this felt like a return to the team that we had seen in January that was just gutting out wins no matter who was, ending up on the injured list at the end of the game. And it was good. And they're 2-0 against Vegas. And I wanted to make the joke that, well, we'll see you guys in the Stanley Cup final, and it's going to be a sweep because the Islanders seem to have a pretty good record against the Golden Knights since they entered the league. What'd you make of this game? Again, it was mainly the Sorokin show, but I didn't think the Islanders played that poorly. There was a lot of zone time for Vegas, but there was also a lot of like block shots and things like that. And once again, like you said, the lineup is what it is.
Right.
So they have to kind of gut these games out. They're not going to be pretty. And I thought this was a case of an unpretty, but not necessarily unsatisfying win.
I thought the Islanders had one way that they could win that game, and they won it in that exact way. They weren't going to go out there and get engaged with the Knights in a back and forth game. They were going to have to sit back and absorb and counterpunch and hope that Sorokin was better than Samsonov and he was, and just hope that they get one more bounce or break than the Knights did. And for all our talk about the hockey gods smiting the Islanders, and there was a lot of that. We'll talk about it on Saturday, but they did take the night off of picking on us on Tuesday, and the Brock Nelson goal where he broke a stick, went off the ice or went to the bench to get a stick, and then scored seconds later with a tip with that new stick. That's a goal that I would always whine and complain that happens against the Islanders and never happens for the Islanders. Right. But we paid dearly for it. As soon as that goal went in, I was like, I can't wait to see how they get us back for that one, and they sure found a way to do it on Saturday. But yeah, that's the type of win that was very stirring. It was a gutty effort, considering where they're at. Don't like the Barzal injury is getting all the attention, but they also lost Scott Mayfield.
Yes,
it's Adam Pelech and Alex Romanov are the only two guys who are who played on opening night for this team and were at least expected to be main contributors to this blue line that are still playing, and they got a win against a really good team. It was a night to be proud of the team, and it really got you thinking about how this team, for so much of the first half of the season, we were just like, you're not even. There's no like cohesion. There's no connectivity. There's no chemistry. It doesn't look it, and that makes it look like you're not trying hard. We know you're trying hard. We get it, but when we're watching the game, we're being tricked into thinking you're not because it doesn't it doesn't look like you guys know one another,
Right.
which is crazy because you were just at Anders Lee's kid's christening like 2 weeks ago. Like we know this. So then you watch the game against Vegas and the games against Winnipeg and Minnesota to some extent, and you're like, if you had just done this
Right.
for the first half of the season, we're in a very different spot. But so it's really hard to kind of flush that out of your brain and not think, where's this been the whole season?
Yeah.
Every time they win, and if you're able to do that, you come away from this game really just, it was a fun game to be an Islander fan for. They get the win, they held on for dear life. Thought everybody was kind of pulling the rope in the same direction for this one, and they got rewarded, and then they had a couple days off, and it's been a weird kind of week for the wild card race just generally. And it's going to be like this because there's so many teams involved where
Right.
the Canadians have kind of fallen off. The Red Wings couldn't lose for a little bit, and they finally lost the other night. The Rangers got back. The Rangers in 24 hours. Larry Brooks went from writing that the Rangers were a revitalized team because Zibanejad had a good game when I can't remember who they beat, but they beat someone, and then the next night they lost. And his headline was that loss was inexcusable and shows that they need to give up on the season. And then their next game they won. So they're finding out what a roller coaster ride it's like to be in this position. The Bruins had a very Islanders loss against the Golden Knights on Saturday. So like it's the ladder has just shifted so much. It's really hard to make sense of all of it. So the Islanders had a couple nights off where we were just scoreboard watching. The Senators have come back down to earth too, and it's so exhausting. But to get that win against Vegas and then know, okay, we did our part. We have off till Friday. It was a really nice couple days to be an Islander fan, even knowing that the next two games coming up are going to be really difficult.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this Vegas game. I wasn't really kind of into the idea. You never know what Vegas is so good, and the Islanders haven't really been great at home. But I really enjoyed this game. I thought UBS Arena sounded really, really good. Sounded really, really packed, for a Tuesday night or whatever it was. And, this is, I'm going to get, I 100% agree with you. Like, this is the type of game they needed to play. And this was the kind of game that would, where has this been this whole time? I'm going to get really into that when we talk about the next two games. But overall, I thought this was a good one. And Sorokin, again, it can't be understated how good he was in this game. And he is, more than any individual player, really kind of helped them get to where they, quote unquote, where they are now, which is, 4 points out of the playoff spot as opposed to 14 points out of the playoff spot, I guess. But the thing about the Sorokin kind of renaissance, which, shouldn't really be a surprise because he's been that good. I don't know if people are really talking about the role that Marcus Hogberg, who is hurt, played in this. Like, Hogberg being pretty good and giving Sorokin a break, particularly the couple of weeks leading up to the new year, I think really helped Sorokin. And I feel like he was getting overworked. And again, we're going to talk about the back-to-back in a second, where he looked pretty tired in the second game. But I don't know. Am I crazy to think that the Hogberg, I mean, he only played a handful of games. I'm not, it's not like he was evenly splitting this with Varlamov, but I feel like those few games that Hogberg played, let Sorokin sit on the bench, might have had a really, really beneficial effect on Sorokin, because ever since they started using Hogberg more, Sorokin's looked like a different player than he was in the first half of the season when he was kind of mediocre. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't really great either. Am I crazy, or does that make sense?
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And yeah, I think so many. You're right. We focused on how, wow, Hogberg, this is a fun story. He's playing great. Yeah. But the ripple effect of that is that he gave Sorokin a breather, which he desperately needed.
Right.
And he won the Star of the Week and was so good. I think the Islanders are back in contention for a playoff spot almost solely because of Sorokin. So yeah, I think it's a really good point. Like, it's so important. We've seen it, right? Like, the Islanders for the from basically the time that Rick DiPietro and Steve Bejen collided to the arrival of Halak and Grice. Like it was really hard for this team to find
one goalie, let alone two.
Right. And that made sense. Like it's
Right.
some seasons we went into it, we're like, oh my God, they have Marty Biron, Dwayne Rollison, and Rick DiPietro. and then it's the on, like, they get these behemoths from Europe with
Nilsson,
Anders
Koskinen.
Nilsson and Koskinen, right? And
then it's
it just
the Nabokov saga, the whole thing.
we love Nabby, and then finally like Halak and Grice tandemed, and that buys you time to draft Sorokin and develop him correctly, let him continue playing in Russia, and work on just the right way to get him over here. Obviously Leonard and Grice, and then Varley, and now Sorokin. It just goes to show you how the entire hockey world spent 4 or 5 years from basically the time Barry Trotz came to the Islanders to, I don't know, maybe a year ago or this beginning of this season. I guess I've heard less of it, but how they tried to convince you that goaltending just is impossible to quantify and hard to exist, and you shouldn't even try to get good goalies. And the Islanders are kind of spit in the face of that, because they owe so much to having good goaltending over these last 7 or 8 years, and now we're seeing just how important it is to have that second guy, or in Hogberg's case, that third guy, because it exponentially helps the top guy to have someone back there. And even with Varley just going away for a little bit, we saw that the Islanders kind of crumpled, knowing that Sorokin, they're just going to wear him out, and the whole team was like, all right, we're just going to run this guy to ragged again, and it didn't work. And then in steps Hogberg. Sorokin gets a little break, and then comes out of that little breather sharp as attack. So yeah, it's a really astute point.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like not enough people are talking about Marcus Hogberg, but mainly that's because he's hurt, just like everybody else. Okay, so like you said, they play Vegas. They beat Vegas. It's a great night. They're getting a little bit of help from outside. The wild card race is completely different. It seems like every game. And then they have 3 days off before a game in Winnipeg on Friday, and then Minnesota on Saturday. And both of these games unfolded in eerily similar ways. I don't mean that only because the Islanders lost both of them. They lost 4-3 in Winnipeg, and then they lost 6-3 in Minnesota. But in both cases, for the first half of the game, maybe a little bit more, the Islanders were right there with the other team. In Winnipeg, they gave up a goal. Holmstrom scores a goal a minute in. They give up a goal to Iafallo a couple minutes later. Kind of just threw Bo Horvat off to the side. It was kind of an embarrassing play. But then Gatcombe makes it 2-1. I saw some people on my feed like, who the hell is Mark Gatcombe? And I'm like, it's the Comer. That didn't really go over that well. The second period, unfortunately, was mostly Jets. Gabe Velarde scored to tie the game. Cole Perfetti finds Nick Ehlers, makes it 3-2 Winnipeg. Velarde again goes back and forth with Mark Scheifele, 4-2 Winnipeg. But it just wasn't really there for the Islanders. They would get another goal of Palmieri in front, real greasy, kind of classic Kyle Palmieri goal to make it 4-3. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at Connor Hellebuck for about a 5-minute period in the third period, but he wouldn't let anything in, and they ended up not giving up an empty net goal. But shots were 35-27. Sorokin made 23 saves. I thought he was good in this game. Hellebuck did what he always does, made 32. It was a tough spot, but it was a good effort for them. And I thought to myself, and this is kind of what you were getting to before. By the way, the Jets, that was their 8th straight win. So, I mean, there's no harm in this, or I should say there's no shame in losing to these guys. But I was thinking the exact same thing that you were just talking about, which is like, if you guys had lost more games with this kind of effort earlier in the season, I probably wouldn't hate you as much as I hate you right now. Like, it's a loss. It sucks. It doesn't come at the great time. No loss really ever does. But like, this was a loss when you were a very undermanned team playing a very, very good, very healthy team at home on the road in the first game of a back-to-back. They had every reason to just, before a 2-week break. And you could have expected them to just kind of roll over and die, but they didn't. And I mean, I lost, but it's hard to really complain about the effort too much here in the face of a really, really daunting opponent. What'd you make of this one? I enjoyed the game despite the loss. I thought Winnipeg's third jerseys look really nice. Love seeing games from out there. And boy, the Jets are like a well-oiled machine, man. They just the way they can spring into offensive mode in a split second, and a guy is open for a 2-on-1 or give and go, or like, he gets the way they just know where the other guy's going to be and get open is really incredible. And I really wish the Islanders were like that. They aren't, and they haven't been in our lifetime, but it's really impressive. I don't know if I know they're like, they had the most points in the league, and I don't want to say people aren't talking about them, but I really don't think people are talking about them enough, how really good they are. Now, if they could put it together in the playoffs, that's a different thing, which the Jets historically have never been able to do. But just watching them play is really impressive. I enjoy watching the Jets play.
Yeah, and they're like a kindred spirit, right? There's they're a team that if the Islanders don't win the Stanley Cup, the Jets are pretty high on the list of the team like I'd be happiest to see win the Stanley Cup after them. And what is really impressive about them is, like, we know that Connor Hellebuck is a huge reason why they're good this season, but you look at their statistical numbers they're not elite, but then you watch them play and you say, it doesn't matter. It actually reminds me a little bit of the first season under Barry Trotz and the 56 game season, where everyone is just so in tune with one another that it's the execution is just off the charts. And what I would say here is that these guys have played together for a really long time now. Like Scheifele, Connor, Nick Ehlers. I know he didn't play because he was hurt, but like Lowry, Cole Perfetti's been there a while now. This is a team that Josh Morrissey, DeMello, Pionk, like these guys have been together for a long time. It's not a bad thing to have a core together for this long. Wouldn't you know? And it has its upside. And they a lot of people have been talking about like the Islanders should copy the Washington Capitals homework with how they retool, but I think the answer is kind of look at what this team does. The Jets, they just find a way to get guys like a Gabe Velarde on that trade for PL Dubois. That trade completely changed the Jets' trajectory, in my mind. So they're an example to keep in mind for like how you can't a trade, even if you give up a good player, you can. And I know Dubois wasn't great back then, but he is a good player. It can change everything. This game, the Islanders have had a lot of losses this season, but they've had very few feel-good losses, and this one definitely goes into that realm. Or it did. I should say it did until they lost on Saturday, because it's like, all right, like if you can find a way to squeeze a point out of Saturday night, I could feel pretty good about this. But that's the thing that sucks is about sports and hockey, is just because you played really well one night and sort of deserve to get like a better result out of a game doesn't mean that you're going to get rewarded for it the next night, or vice versa. So it was a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow, because I thought if the Islanders deserved better, and we're now at the point of the season where there's just so little margin for error that if they don't make good on games like this, you want to feel better about it, but you can't, and it's their fault that you feel that way too. It's well, if you've played better in losses against the Red Wings and the Blue Jackets and Chicago Blackhawks, we'd be a little bit more inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt. But they I don't know, they held their own, and it felt like the Islanders, even without Barzal and Mayfield and Riley and Varlamov and Hogberg, just go down the list, even without all those guys, Pollock, Dobson, they showed that when they are playing the right way and they are all on the same page, they can go toe-to-toe with the best team in the NHL. And I think we all believe that about this team, and they've shown it now a few times in January. They played really well against the Hurricanes. They played really well against the Avalanche. They played really well against the Jets and the Golden Knights. This is a team that does have a higher ceiling than people want to give them credit for. The problem is that they don't stay at that ceiling very long. I mean, even the Lightning have won 3 in a row. I think they're winning right now. They're going to go into the break likely on a 4-game winning streak. The Lightning have the second best goal difference in the Eastern Conference, and actually, I think what we're seeing is like the Islanders can play with those teams. The problem is that they couldn't for a little, or they didn't
Right.
for a little while. So it gives you a little bit of it was a loss that inspires like a little bit of hope, but you still need to get those points. And I do echo everything you say about the Jets. Like I am absolutely rooting for that team. It would be so fucking funny if this drought that we hear about, will a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup for the first time since 1993? No, not that team. We didn't mean that team. But we were kind of talking about another team,
Right.
when we were talking about that. So
yeah, I don't know if that sentiment reaches the Winnipeg or Ottawa contingents of the Canadian, hockey NHL franchises, right? If it's anybody else but them, even Calgary, I don't know about you either, but
Calgary's like kind of like on the border.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it definitely doesn't. That definitely doesn't mean anything to Winnipeg. If it was Winnipeg, wow, what? No, not these guys. The other reason, by the way, and I was going to interrupt you, but I let you go. The other reason Winnipeg feels like a kindred spirit is because last week or the week before, the Athletic put out their like player poll of like favorite arenas, least favorite arenas, that kind of thing, and like the one place that the number one place nobody wants to get traded to is Winnipeg, and like the reasoning is like there's nothing to do, there's no place to hang out or do stuff, and it's cold and blah blah blah, and it's like the Islanders only recently kind of made it off of that list, mainly because of UBS Arena, but it made me kind of feel bad a little bit for the Jets, and all I could think of was where do the players live? Like, because I mean, we heard this crap for years. Meanwhile, the players themselves, the Islanders themselves, were living in beautiful houses in Garden City or on the North Shore, and had these big houses and the schools and the all the access to New York City, the golf courses, all the stuff that we're accustomed to having access to on Long Island, and being like, well, if you guys saw more than the Marriott and Nassau Coliseum, you wouldn't think this way. And I kind of feel that way about the Jets, where, well, if you guys didn't see the Canada Life Center and the Starbucks across the street or the hotel across the street from the place, maybe you would feel differently. Because I mean, Mark Scheifele has lived in Winnipeg now for like 10 years, right? 12 years, whatever it is. He's got to live someplace nice, or else he would have left by now, wouldn't he? I mean, I don't know. It kind of felt like,
I know.
It just brought up all these memories of me being like, no, you don't understand. Like, somebody's here for a reason. These guys are here for a reason. They like it there. And if you got traded there, I'm sure you'd probably like it too. I don't know.
I think those things would just like completely run their course too. At this point, like it's just like an opportunity for we know exactly what all the answers are going to be. Okay,
right.
Everyone, get ready to pile on.
Right.
And then the one thing that always jumps out about those things to me, and it just gets glossed over, is that everyone shits on like Carolina too. And then, but that's just like, oh, but we don't want to talk about that because our friend is their general manager,
right?
And they don't spend a dime on making sure that people are comfortable or whatever. It's the owner is got alligator arms in that when it comes to that. But our buddy is the general manager, and he made the great trade that isn't working out for them.
Right.
But it's not his fault.
Right. So what if the arena is like apparently never finished, and it's just kind of a gross place to play and everything?
Right.
Tiny,
yeah. For us, that was a scarlet letter, but for them, it's just so cool and kitschy. Like that's what the Hurricanes are. They're a bunch of jerks. They're not like the Islanders, who are just a real bunch of jerks. With their players, jerk GM.
Right. These players should be thankful that they're playing for Eric Tulsky. Like, they should be happy about that. Basically.
He's on his computer during the game the other day, probably reading blogs about making sure that like the comments are still saying, "Oh, he's doing a great job," even though this trade is really not working out for them. Right. But once again, is anybody gonna? Nah. When Mikko Rantanen gets flipped at the trade deadline, everyone will be like, "What a genius!" He knew he had to cut bait. Most GMs won't admit to a mistake like him. What a really smart guy he is.
He could have held on to him for a playoff run, but it's better to get that 4th round pick. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Eric Tulsky, during that game where he was photographed on his laptop, was probably playing Kingdom Come 2, which just came out and is apparently very good. He looks like a guy who would be playing PC real-time strategy games during a hockey game. But in any event, I did enjoy the game despite the loss. And like you said, I mean, or like we've been saying, it was a loss, but it was one in which the Islanders really did play pretty well. They were just overwhelmed at one point, in the second period by a much better team, but they didn't just kind of roll over and die. They gave it some, and again, they came within a goal and they threw the house at Connor Hellebuck in the third period. But this is why he's got 2 Vezina trophies, right? So it was a tough spot, but they did try well. And the worst part about this game, and we're going to talk about the next game right now, is that if you were going to win one of these 2 games, this was probably the one to win. As tough as it was, as much of an uphill climb as it would be to win this game, the Islanders do have a pretty good record against Winnipeg. As good as the Jets are, it would have been helpful to win the game. Would have been helpful if they played Eric Comrie instead of Connor Hellebuck, but I guess why they didn't. And so, having lost that game, particularly in regulation, now it sets up a situation where they got to go into Minnesota, a place where, I'm not joking, they literally haven't won since 2019. Okay. I joked last time that they didn't win there. They haven't won there since the 1981 Stanley Cup final. I was a little bit off. Turns out they haven't won there since 2019 or beaten Minnesota at all since 2019, maybe. Whatever. It doesn't matter because the Wild own the Islanders. It's incredibly annoying. This team has accomplished absolutely nothing in 30 years in the NHL, but yet somehow they have destroyed the Islanders in ways that, keep getting more and more embarrassing. The 6-3 score might be a little bit misleading. The Islanders were terrific through the first half of this game. They were really, really good. They had a 3-1 lead at one point. The Wild took a lead. Sorry, I forgot that they were playing for a second there. The Wild took a lead really early, but Palmieri ties it with a turnaround shot on the next shot. They open up the second period with a goal from Brock Nelson. Beautiful pass from Max Siplikov. And then a jumping keep-in by Scott Perunovich sets up Anders Lee for a 3-1 goal. Just a real quick aside on Perunovich, who's I think has played very well. I texted you in our group chat yesterday. I think I kind of might love this guy. Like, I don't know. He seems like I really enjoyed watching him play. He's got a lot of offensive creativity. He's not a big guy, but he seems to be involved. He hasn't been on the ice for too many big mistakes. We're going to talk about a guy who was in a couple of minutes, but I've really enjoyed the Scott Perunovich experience. And this is the kind of player that speaks to me. Weird Islanders, the podcast, is full of guys like this. A high pick from some other team doesn't work out for reasons A, B, and C. What difference does it make? He ends up on the Islanders, and he ends up kind of unlocking his potential as an NHL player. We're going to pause here on the game, but what's your feelings on the Perunovich experience right now? His nickname is Scooter, which is great. He's like the best Scooter we've seen in New York since Phil Rizzuto. There's a name you didn't expect to hear on a hockey podcast this year. And I'm just enjoying it. That play he made with Anders Lee was terrific.
It was. And I saw Matty the Usher tweet this out, which I thought was hilarious. He called him Lubomir Perunovich.
I love it.
Yeah. That's the kind of guy we love. Like, we love the Lubo Wisnowski type, the small little guy, big smile on his face, and
he's out there wheeling.
Jobs. Yeah. I used to think. I don't know if we've ever said it on the podcast, but my favorite thing about Wisnowski and the way he played was he would do things that when you were face to face with him or chasing him with the he had the puck and you're the opposition, you're chasing him. He would do literally the last thing you'd ever imagine him to do with the puck all the time. It was like his superpower was the guy chasing him would calculate, okay, maybe he'll do this, or this, but he definitely won't do that because that's crazy. And then he would do exactly that thing. And that's what I thought Perunovich did really well last night, was kind of get guys to fall asleep a bit when he had the puck, because they're like, there's no way in hell he would try a jump save, then go to the backhand all in one breath. And he's been really good. He's been really fun. And I guess this portion of the game, like when he made that play and that pass to Anders Lee and the Islanders score that goal, you're thinking, I talked about this the other night with when Matt, when Marcus Gatcomb scored against the Panthers. For a second there, you're like, oh man, there is something going on here. Like, there's something happening. But as you go recapping the rest of the game, maybe there's not.
Yeah. It didn't turn out to be as much as we thought. It didn't turn out to be the game of destiny, because the streaks all have to come to an end at some point, right? So they haven't beaten Minnesota since 2019. They got to beat them at some point. and it looked like this was going to be the night. But then a couple of things happened, and mostly they happened to Tony DeAngelo. Freddie Goudreau throws a puck towards the net that, as Brendan said on the broadcast, was going about 6 feet wide, bounces off DeAngelo in behind Sorokin, makes it 3-2. And from that point out, the Wild could not be stopped. Boldy got a nice tip in from Jonas Brodin 50 seconds later, ties the game. And then Jakub Trenin kind of tipped in a puck. He basically crashed in on Sorokin, tipped in a shot that like knocked the stick out of his hand. And he looked like he was kind of like doing a sort of a professional wrestler, like, flexing his muscles celebration over Sorokin. That was kind of the salt in the wound, made it 4-3. My notes here say it was a great period until it wasn't. The third period starts. The Islanders have absolutely no possession for 5 minutes. And I'm like, this is no way to come back in a game. But then the Wild are in their zone. Somebody puts the puck in front, and DeAngelo, in what can only be described as a momentary and incredibly hilarious lapse in judgment, basically swipes the puck past Sorokin for the 5-3 goal. Boldy got credit for it. I guess he was the guy who threw it in front. But like Tony D looked like he was trying to jam the puck in against the opposing goalie's net. Maybe his Ranger instincts kicked in and he saw an Islanders jersey and just decided he wanted to score. He looked pretty pissed off. The Wild started laughing. I was not laughing. It was pretty bad. And it just, we knew at some point that these guys were going to, the bloom was going to come off the rose at a certain point with these new guys. By the way, speaking of the 3 new guys, if you haven't had a chance, check out, there's an article on the Islanders site called Isles 3 New Defensemen Fitting In, Having Fun with New Team by Rachel Lucier. It is delightful, absolutely delightful article. Check it out. I know, here we are talking about DeAngelo's mess up, but I thought the article was great. This is where we found out about Perunovic being called Scooter and the whole nickname kind of thing. So it worked out pretty well. Definitely check it out. But yeah, this was a really unfortunate situation for a guy who's come in and played pretty well. Perunovic will have a moment like this. I'm sure Boquist will have a moment like this if they haven't already. But this was, there are own goals that happen in hockey. It happens, in every kind of sport with a goal like that. But this was an own goal that's really, like, I wanted to crawl under a rock. Like, although that being said, I did think about this later. I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often with the way players change teams. And, the game is so intense that why wouldn't you just try and shove the puck under the goalie that's standing in front of you, even before you realize, oh shit, that's my goalie. That was about it. And then they had some chances on a power play that were late. That was their only good looking power play. Of course, they didn't score on it. And then Marcus Foligno hits basically a 190-foot empty net goal. Sorokin wasn't great in this game. He looked tired to me. Again, he wouldn't be in there if Hogberg or Varlamov, who we don't know what the hell is going on with him, had played. Gustafsson was very good for Minnesota. He made 30 saves. Everybody had 33 shots. So they gave it a run. A lot like the Florida game. I see why they lost. It's kind of a scheduled loss. They did play well for half of it, but ultimately, coupled with the previous loss in Winnipeg, and now everybody kind of winning and you kind of being part of this big group at the bottom of the wild card standings, it made for a really, really unfortunate way to go into the Four Nations break. That's a lot to take in for this game. So what were your thoughts on it, and particularly the 2 DeAngelo gaffes that basically led directly to goals against?
Yeah, I was talking about the hockey gods before, giving us a break against Vegas, and then this game, the Islanders were it really looked like the Islanders were about to run away with this game and win like 6-1.
Yeah.
And Casey Cizikas made a play that Casey Cizikas, he'd been playing pretty well for a couple weeks, and he got carried away. He got too cute, and the Islanders. The reason the Islanders had been playing well was because they were keeping things simple. Like players outside of Lubomir Perunovic weren't trying to do too much, right? They were playing within themselves. Everyone kind of knew their role, even like down to Pierre Engvall with that fourth line with McLean and Gatcombe. Everyone got their mission notes and was doing it. Hell, Dennis Chalowski's role right now is to play 3 minutes a night. And then Cizikas colored outside the lines for a split second, and the hockey gods jumped on that, and they said, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to do this. He holds Vinny Heinestroza, who I just feel like this guy, finds ways to pester the Islanders. When the Wild picked him up on waivers, I saw he scored in his first game, and I was like, thank God, because if it was his first game against the Islanders, he absolutely would have scored. But he still finds a way to haunt us by drawing a penalty, and that probably should have been both of those guys probably should have gone. And the Islanders do a pretty decent job of killing the power play off, and then Freddie Gaudreau, another guy who I feel like just kills the Islanders somehow, takes a shot. It's going like 8 feet wide, that shot. And it finds a way to hit Tony DeAngelo in a way where it slows the puck down and flutters over Sorokin's head like an arch.
Yeah.
Even though the two guys are standing right next to each other.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was completely ridiculous.
How can you look at that goal and not be like, what? Especially considering the luck that this team has had all season, and not be like, what have we done? Because you knew right there that was the Wild. The only way the Wild were going to win this game was if the Islanders left the door cracked open, and they did through the Cizikas play, and the Wild, they kicked the door down. Couple other deflections end up in the goal. Obviously, the DeAngelo shot against his own goal was not fun to watch. But there was like a bunch of things in this game that were just. There was at one point where Casey Cizikas handed the stick back to Marcus Johansson.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that was great.
Right.
Build up as much good karma as you can, because we are so smited and cursed against that those things hopefully get rewarded. And instead, Casey, of course, is the guy that unravels the team. The second goal, that Gaudreau goal, that not only did it hit off DeAngelo and flutter over Sorokin's head, but it was maybe offsides.
They went back and looked. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you probably should have challenged it, because I feel like that goal's been called offsides quite a bit. So there was just like a lot of like weird shit. So, that power play where the Islanders were down a couple goals, Bo Horvat and Holmstrom are in on a 2-on-1. Horvat probably should have shot it. Doesn't. Puck finds Holmstrom, hits the crossbar. At one point, Nelson knocked the stick out of Philip Gustafson's hand with a stick. There was just so much shit, and it makes me so mad that it was the Wild, because I feel like there's just something about this team that pisses me off to no end, and the Islanders just can never find a way to get a bounce against them. And Wild wins against the Islanders always seem to throw the Islanders season like into another dimension. I think last season, their first loss, the Islanders lost to the Wild and then lost 8 in a row, and that was almost when Patrick Waugh came the first time, and then they lost again, and Lane Lambert got fired a couple of days later. They had lost to the Wild, I believe, in the season before that, and that started an Islanders, a tailspin too. It just feels like these losses to Minnesota have some kind of funk to them that turns the Islanders season upside down. And as we know, like, this is just a continuation of the 2021-2022 season. So much so that the Islanders have had 57 points from 53 games in each of the past 3 seasons. Crazy. So if you think we're being hyperbolic when we talk about that, we're not. Like, this is the same team over and over and over again.
Yeah.
The same season over and over again, I should say, not the same team.
Real quick, Minnesota is also the place where Yaro Halak lost and then was put on waivers the next day. And for whatever reason, I always think of that now when they play in Minnesota, even though it was like 10 years ago.
It's just, I don't know. There's something weird about it. The Islanders, and there's some weird stuff. So yeah, I don't, it was not fun. And then you have to realize, oh God, I got 2 weeks to try to make sense of where they are. And as I talked about at the top of the show, like, you can make an argument for 4 different paths for this team, 5 different paths for this team. And now we just all have to argue about what the Islanders should do, and listen to the discourse and all that stuff about, oh, they need to trade Nelson, or they need to do this, they need to do that, when nobody knows. Like, this team now has a 2-week break. They come out of the break with the Stars, Rangers, Bruins, Rangers. It's a schedule where if the Islanders can make some hay, it's actually a little advantageous for them where they are, just because if the Islanders want to stay in this race, like, they have no choice but to win the lion's share of those games, because they're playing against teams that are directly, 3 of the first 5 games are against teams the 2 teams directly above them in the standings. So if you lose those ones, it's basically done. But it's so it's now 2 weeks of thinking about that and these bounces that, like, I guess at the end of the night the Islanders did not deserve to win that game. But when you put the 2 games together, it's really, really hard not to say that they played 120 minutes, they got 0 points out of it, and on face value, they probably deserved at least 2 out of the 4.
Right.
And knowing that they didn't get any and are 4 points out of the playoffs now, and you're like, you're just being pulled in so many different directions here. So
right. Well, I mean, and that goes back to the entire first half of the season, where, like, they would have these games where they would come away with 0 points because they blew a lead in the third period, and then they just weren't getting leads because they couldn't score, and then the goalies weren't kind of playing well, and it's been up and down. And I completely forgot that graphic where they had the same amount of points after 50, what was it, 53 games? Like, I guess it's, I don't know if it's out of date now, but yeah, that just underscores the feeling that we've watched the same season 3 years in a row. And it's like, and I think the difference is that this year they just dug too deep a hole for themselves. I mean, my own personal feeling is that it's just too deep a hole. And looking at the wild card standings right now, so the Canadians are playing right now, as are the Lightning, but the Lightning have moved into third place in the Atlantic. So you got the Ottawa Senators with 62 points. They've lost 3 in a row, coming back down to earth. The Red Wings with 61. They're in the final, the 8th spot, the wild card spot. And then below that line, you've got Columbus with 60 points, Boston with 60 points, the Rangers with 58, the Islanders with 57, Montreal, like I said, with 55. If they win today, they'll tie the Islanders in points. Pittsburgh with 55, Philly with 55. Everybody's got, the Islanders have 55 games played, the Penguins and Bruins have 57, the Blue Jackets and Senators have 56. Everybody else is 55, like the Islanders. It's just such a dogfight that even with a 7-game winning streak, even playing better, even playing more cohesively, even with Sorokin standing on his head for most of the time, I don't know. It's very hard to see the Islanders kind of pulling away and getting into that spot, because every time they win, somebody else wins. And you talked about we won't go too deeply into the schedule because it's a couple weeks from now, but, like, yeah, if they come out and they win those games against the Rangers and Bruins, then that's pretty good. But even if they do, what's to stop Columbus or Detroit from winning those games, or even Pittsburgh from sticking their nose back in it, or the Senators again? So who knows? It's tough. One quick thing on the Red Wings before I forget for later. It is funny that they also won, I think, 7 in a row at one point, and they've been very good since Tom McClellan took over. But I find it funny that people are like, "Oh, good for the Red Wings! Look at them trying to get back in the playoff race. That's excellent." Meanwhile, well, the Islanders are idiots. Why are they winning games? They should be losing. They should be trading people. It's like, if you look at these two rosters, is there any difference between these two at all? Like, one's got Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko on it, and the other one's got, Anthony Duclair and Anders Leon, like Brock. Like, it's funny to me how one team, both teams are in very, very similar spots, but one team getting back into the playoff race is fantastic, and the other one is pure idiocy and a disastrous 7-game winning streak, as we talked about last week.
Right.
So I don't know. I kind of found it funny.
Yeah, it's the old adage that you hate to hear.
Right.
The NHL is better when Detroit is good.
Right.
Oh man, sign me up for a 7-game battle of Ontario with the Senators and Maple Leafs.
Definitely need to see Ben Sherratt in the playoffs. Like, that's superstars.
It wouldn't feel right if the Bruins don't make the playoffs. Ah, man, what a disastrous! I feel bad for Islander fans with all the winning they've been doing lately.
Right.
It's really just so funny. But yeah, and I you look at the standings if you want to kind of draw the line at the Islanders and just focus on who's ahead of them between Ottawa, Detroit, Columbus, Boston, and the Rangers. I think there's so much there. Like, there's only 27 games left, but there still are 27 games left. So that's a lot and a little at the same time. And I don't think, I'll put it this way. I feel a lot better knowing that this is the group that we're competing with than I would in most years. So I don't if you're someone who wants to make the playoffs, I don't think that this is out of their reach at all, even with those 2 losses. So it's yeah, it's I know I'm gonna pull up the standings like 15 times over these next 2 weeks and be like, just do this, beat this team loses over here, and
Right.
but it's
Right. And every time they win, it's like, oh, they're getting closer. And every time they lose, it's like, it's over. It's over.
yeah.
I don't know how much more I can take of it, but this is what we signed up for. Right? And we got 27 more games of this on the other side. So, okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back on the other side of this break and talk very, 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 very briefly about the Four Nations face-off, and then get into some trade rumors or signing rumors, depending on how you look at them. And I don't know. Again, we won't have any answers for you, but we could talk it out, and maybe you'll feel the same way, or maybe we'll make you think of something new. Okay, meet us on the other side. Thanks. And now a word from our sponsors. First is always VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey now carries a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch featuring our blue and orange brain logo, as well as our Al Arbor and the Island shirts. And as always, our portion of the sales go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
So this week begins the Four Nations face-off. I believe it begins on Wednesday, the 12th, with a bunch of games. Listen, if you want a full preview of this thing, go someplace else, because you're not going to get it from us. I'll tell you that right now. However, we should say something about it. So I'm going to throw it right to you. Do you have very brief thoughts on the Four Nations face-off tournament between Team USA, Team Canada, Team Sweden, and Team Finland?
If it's your thing, go for it, right? Like if you like international hockey and you're someone who gets into this kind of stuff, by all means, don't let me rain on your parade. And these next couple minutes aren't for you or directed to you or anything like that. That said, I think it's like a really pandering idea that they put this whole tournament together just because a very loud part of the media was like clamoring to see Cindy Crosby play with Connor McDavid. Like, that is the crux of this tournament, is that these people in the media who are not fans, they're objective reporters, have not seen Cindy Crosby and Connor McDavid play hockey together, and they haven't seen Connor McDavid play against Austin Matthews in international hockey, even though they see it twice a year for a decade now. And the fact that they just complained about it, and now we're getting to the tournament, that's why it's here. And what's funny is Crosby's hurt. A couple other guys are hurt. I think that all the Finnish players are hurt. Alex Pietrangelo
hurt.
Yeah, he was like, he's not even hurt. He's just like, I'm banged up, and I don't want to. It'll be better for Vegas if I don't go. And someone's gonna get hurt at the tournament. There's 4. Each team plays 3 games. I think you said. I don't even know the format, but everyone. What's different about this than the Olympics is basically, when you're in the Olympics, there's teams like Latvia or Slovakia where there's not all that many NHL players on the rosters. This is just all NHL players, and they're all good NHL players, and that means the probability is a very good NHL player is going to get hurt. That's just the probability of it during this tournament. And then all these people in the media who got this tournament to be played in the first place are going to be like, why are they doing this in February? And they're going to be complaining about it that way. And so that's going to happen. The ratings, I know you want to get into the ratings. The ratings are going to be terrible. I think if you were to ask someone who's not a hockey fan I mean, like we're recording this on Super Bowl Sunday. If you were to ask somebody at the stadium between the Chiefs and the Eagles who doesn't watch hockey, did you know that there's an international hockey tournament starting on ESPN on Wednesday? They would say absolutely not. What is it like the one with all the little kids, like the teenagers, and or something? I hear about that every once in a while. It's not going to do anything, and it's just so misguided. I think it's so misguided that we talked a lot about the ESPN broadcast, and we didn't mention it during the Minnesota game, but before the game, Brock Nelson spoke to like Ethan Sears or someone was like, I don't know why John Buccigross would say that. This is the first, et cetera. Like kind of threw cold water on it. And I want to be like, well, that's because John Buccigross treats ESPN broadcasts of hockey games like they're the John Buccigross podcast, and there just happens to be a hockey game going on in the background. Right. And this is not how the game gets better. And if the game getting better is what leads to growth, it's not. And I don't know. Like maybe I am cynical. Like I get that, but I just don't think that this is going to go well at all. Yeah. Like, I just don't think it's going to go well.
It's not going to grow the game. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. 10 years from now, they're not going to look back on this like, man, that's what really did it. You know what? I think and maybe I'm wrong. The thing that truly changed hockey more than anything is Wayne Gretzky going to California because the Kings got good and people cared about hockey because the Kings were good. Like that's what did it. The Kings got good. Finland versus Sweden in Montreal on Wednesday night on ESPN. No one's tuning into that and being like, I need to check out this hockey stuff and seeing, oh my God, Willie Nylander's wearing such a cool suit going to the Sweden game and he's playing against his teammate. This is amazing. Sign me up. Season tickets.
Yeah. Well, it's funny to me that you see those commercials and it's like, it's got Matthew Tkachuk and William Nylander. And I'm just, every time I watch them, I'm like, nobody knows who these guys are. Like, nobody knows who these guys are. They know who Patrick Mahomes is. They know who Travis Kelce is. They know who, a handful of other players, maybe Bryce Harper, like, or Ohtani, maybe. Like, obviously everybody knows who LeBron James is, but like, how many other athletes in the world does everybody know? And it's like, if you're a Canadian advertiser or, network executive, of course, William Nylander is the guy you want to, feature on a commercial. Oh yeah. Austin Matthews, the other guy, he's like, 4 nations getting together. It's like, that's great. Thank you, Austin, for rolling out of bed and putting on a suit.
It's also great that that's the tagline.
Yeah.
4 days. How are we going to sell this thing? I don't know. 4 countries playing hockey together. Yeah. 4 nations getting together. What?
It's just, I just, the Olympics is one thing because people make it a point to watch the Olympics, and you just mentioned countries like Latvia, Slovakia, Switzerland, whatever, these smaller countries, the upset potential of them beating a Sweden or a Canada or a Team USA, that's what gets people enjoy. I mean, I will never forget watching Latvia beat Sweden. The 1 year, the Carlos Scratchins or whoever it was that scored that goal, like I remember that. And it happens every year. It seems like there's some upset. And this is like Sweden beating Finland in this tournament is not an upset. Like all 4 of these teams can win this thing. And you mentioned the people being hurt. Sidney Crosby has been in the NHL for 19 seasons. Right? That's an incredible accomplishment. He's done a lot. He's won cups. He's won MVPs. He's one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. How many All-Star games has Sidney Crosby played in those 19 seasons? Can you guess? Like the actual game, not being named to the team. I mean, like being actually physically in the game.
11?
That would be a good guess. The answer is 6. He was in the 2007 game. He played 17, 18, 19, then 2023, and then 2024, last year's All-Star game. This dude has been in the league for 19 years. He's played in 6 All-Star games. He was obviously named to all of them, I'm sure, but like he's only played physically in 6. And now, on the eve of this big international tournament, suddenly Sid isn't feeling too well. He got hit in a game and he went down kind of hard. And I don't know if he's going to make it, Friedge, if he's going to be able to play in this game, in this tournament. Maybe he'll come out for not the first game, but maybe the second game that Canada plays, he'll play. I'm not saying anything. I would never impugn the rest, the reputation of Sidney Patrick Crosby. I found out what his middle name was. I joked about it on another podcast. It's not Jay. It's Pete. It's Sidney Patrick Crosby. I'm not here to impugn the man's reputation. I am here to say that I think that maybe Sid wants some time off. Like I think maybe Sid wants a couple extra. Maybe he'll play. He'll probably play, but it'll be like games 2 and 3 or whatever. And I find it very funny that this guy is the epitome of hockey greatness. And every time there comes a big showcase event comes around, all of a sudden Sid, he's not really into it anymore. So he's got the goal. What else does he need to do? Like he won a gold medal with a goal. Who fucking cares what he's doing from here on out?
And yeah, I'll guarantee you 2 things about this thing. No matter what, no matter how the tournament goes, just like that Amazon documentary,
right?
Afterward, and just like every Winter Classic, afterwards, we'll be fed the party line from every corner of the media that this was great.
Yeah,
best thing hockey's ever done.
Hockey fans are gonna love this.
If you're not a real hockey fan, if your spine isn't tingling after that national anthem, so that's number 1, and number 2. As soon as it's over, 2 days after we get all those stories and the water carrying and all that, nobody's going to talk about it again.
Yeah, it'll be like it never happened.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the Amazon documentary and most of the Winter Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned before, I am interested in seeing the ratings for this because they are not going to be good. Well, I'm just telling you right now, they're just not going to be good.
And then the excuses will come because it's always about, the NFL, we got to get away from the NFL. Right. And then everyone said, well, people were kind of probably tired because it was right after the Super Bowl and whatever. But in Canada, they were strong, obviously. In Canada, the ratings were great. But in the States, it's just a little tougher and it's hard with all the streaming and whatever. Like, no, nobody cares. It's just nobody cares. The NHL, once again, I'll say it, the worst thing that's ever happened in the NHL is getting lumped into the label of 4 major sports with the other ones because it's not. It's not. There's the NFL, then there's the NBA, and then there's baseball, and then way, way down is the NHL.
Yep.
And until the sport and the league realize that here in the United States, it's just going to continue to make these kind of ham-fisted attempts at growing the game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you got to get past the NASCAR and the golf and the soccer and every college sport known to man before you even almost see the NHL. But these guys, they're going to keep on trying. So good luck with that. And hey, maybe the tournament's great. And obviously, it goes without saying that our number one takeaway from this entire tournament is that Brock Nelson better come out of it healthy. That's it. That's the only thing that matters here is that Brock Nelson comes out of this thing in one piece and 100% as he is when he's going in. He's healthy as a horse. Like he's playing well. So keep your hands off of our Brock because he might, he's gonna play a big part in the Islanders' future this season, one way or the other. Okay, that's been your Four Nations face-off minute or 4 minutes, I guess. Okay. This week, we saw some trade rumors pop up regarding Noah Dobson specifically. We also saw some things popping up as far as a contract extension with Brock Nelson. We'll get to him in a few more minutes. The thing about the Dobson, I guess we should talk about the sort of Dobson rumors. And before we get to there, I kind of have to, I guess, rant a little bit. The genesis of a lot of these rumors came from a tweet from something called the RG Media, which is, I guess, the home of exclusive sports news, interviews, and analysis. Okay. I'm not trying to shit on anybody or rain on anybody's parade here, but just for me personally, and I have a rule for myself, and people can follow this rule if they want to. They don't have to. It's just a me thing personally in this environment and this, situation that we are in now with the sort of being the modern sports fan. My feeling is I never believe a trade rumor or any kind of rumor from somebody that has less Twitter followers than me. It's a dumb rule, but I feel like it probably fits most categories. Like I'm not out there. I haven't used Twitter in 2 months. So if you've been messaging me on Twitter, sorry, I'm over on Blue Sky. But like, if you have less Twitter followers than me, a person that doesn't care about how many Twitter followers they have, I don't know. Maybe you're not doing something right. It's a very unscientific metric here. But when this popped up, I was like, who? And, then it gets kind of chased and people start writing about it. And then it gets to the NHL Network and 2 ex-Rangers are talking about it as if they've already traded Dobson, which is like, guys, he's still here. He's hurt. They can't trade him anyway. Like you can't trade an injured player as far as I know. And then I got friends asking me like, what's the deal? Why would they trade Dobson? Isn't he great? His numbers are good. What is Lou stupid? What's going on? Why? And then I have to be on the defensive and I have to be like, well, he hasn't looked right in a while, in about a year or so. I don't want them to trade Dobson, although some games I kind of do because he makes a mistake that drives me nuts. But that being said, I can kind of see it being a possibility, like it's not because they picked up 3 dudes off the scrap heap, but because something has been going on with him for the better part of the last calendar year. And you're not going to know that unless you watch this guy play every single game as we have. We have watched every single game of Noah Dobson's career going back to the bubble when he was paired with Andy Green, who's old enough to be his father. And they were terrific in that bubble. They were great. And, somewhere along, progress is not linear. We get that. Somewhere along the line, the progress of Noah has stopped. And, if I'm Lou Lamoriello, I don't necessarily want to trade the guy right away. But, I think it's something that's a possibility that's out there. That being said, he's an Islander. He's hurt. He's not getting traded right now, or he could, I guess, during the break. But it just seems to me that the combination of a source from really nowhere, Incarcerated Bob talked about this. So he's a guy I believe more because he's got more Twitter followers than me, and he's been right in the past. So I kind of get that, and he's kind of mentioned stuff about this. So I don't know if maybe this is, they are thinking about trading Dobson. I'm just saying it's a possibility considering how his play has somewhat fallen off in the last year. But the worst part is that people who don't watch the Islanders, people who don't pay attention to this team, they only know Noah Dobson from his draft profile because those grifters are their friends and they're all part of the same Professional Liars network. And it's like, it's hard to kind of be like the guy who's like, well, I could see it sort of happening, but I don't know. Those are just kind of random thoughts, I guess, on this whole thing. Where are you on the Noah Dobson trade front? I mean, we're both, I think, on the same page that we like Dobson. It's not that. It's just that he hasn't looked right in at least the last calendar year. We could point to Patrick Waugh coming in here, but I think it might have happened a little bit before that. His 70-point season is a bit of a mirage. He had 50 points in the first half of the season. It looked like he was going to win the Norris Trophy, and then he kind of fell apart towards the end. But that being said, I mean, I don't know if either of us is really gunning to trade the guy. But again, like I said, it is a possibility. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't happen unless, Lou Lamoriello has some kind of other solution in his back pocket. So where are you with the Dobson rumors and all that stuff?
Yeah, I had never heard of RG Media before.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing. I was like, wait, why is everyone now?
Right.
Why are people who cover the team now writing stories about a story without like getting it sourced themselves? It was very strange.
Yeah.
That the way that this became gospel. And then, like you said, he's still an Islander. We're talking here on Sunday, February 9th, 2:15 p.m. Eastern time, and Noah Dobson is still an Islander. And there's a couple things. So what you said is right about Dobson. It's so funny that these chart mongers and the grifters and the Professional Liars, especially in the chart slinging community, come out anytime there's a rumor and they're like, here's a chart with a bunch of lines. The island, why are the Islanders trading Noah Dobson? Congratulations to like whoever gets him, whatever. And you're like, well, he's still a New York Islander. Like Noah Dobson is still on the Islanders. Why are you talking about him as if he's not? So that's part one. Part two about that is then they say, why are the Islanders trading Noah Dobson? Look at this, all this green in his chart and the blue and the blobs over here. That tells you that Noah Dobson is really good. And you have a lot of Islander fans in the mentions being like, we watch this guy every game. Like, it's, we understand like he's good, and we're not. Nobody's saying that Noah Dobson is a bad player. They're just saying we watch him and we know that at least at this very point where he is in his career, it's not where anybody expected him to be because of we thought it would be a little bit better. Once again, not saying that's bad. There's certainly Noah Dobson in my mind is like a really good number 2, number 3 defenseman on an NHL team. He is not the guy you're going to build a blue line around. At least not right now. Maybe he gets to there. Who knows? But all these people, it's just this weird thing where you can say, oh no, I watch this guy play every night, and I live and die with every shift of New York Islanders hockey because I'm a gigantic loser. But since you have a spreadsheet of someone else's numbers that spits out like all these lines and graphs, like what he is better than this entire fan base. It just rubs me the wrong way. And then you have another. I think it was what's his name, Jack Hahn. Is that the guy? I can't remember. He was like, I have watched Noah Dobson since his QMJHL days, and this is a guy who just needs the right D partner. So he's just the same as every other defenseman. Like he just needs a good defense partner. So I mean, so does everybody. And I've watched Noah Dobson since then too. Like it's crazy that these guys that there's this weird community that can kind of just talk down to people over the most non-consequential thing you can imagine. It's just professional hockey. It's dudes wearing hockey jerseys playing against one another. So that's that. Then there's the Islanders kind of cone of silence, right?
Yes.
That no matter what, because of the way the Islanders handle these situations, whether it's Brock Nelson's extension or being traded or this Noah Dobson thing or injuries, no matter what, if you operate under a cone of silence like this, there's going to be someone who's going to try to fill the gap. And that leads to a lot of people who maybe know someone with the team, who know someone on the right golf course, who know the maitre d' or the sommelier at
the agent is the big one.
The agent, yeah. Like I said, or like the manager at Bryant and Cooper's in Roslyn. It's Long Island. Like it's a place built on I know a guy, right? It's like that ethos is Long Island. People are going to try to fill the void with that. And sometimes they're right. Like I say all the time, like the caddies know more about what's going on behind the scenes with the Islanders than the professional liars do. It's how this team operates. So sometimes these folks are right, sometimes they're wrong. But it's every time that a situation like this, where there's a little bit of drama around the Islanders emerges, it's going to bubble up because of this kind of the shadow insiders, right? And that then spills over into the mainstream, which then spills over into the chart slingers. And next thing you know, everyone's talking about Noah Dobson as if he's now playing for the Vancouver Canucks or Montreal Canadiens when he's still a New York Islander, and he's a hurt New York Islander. Nobody even knows when he's going to be back. Like he got cross-checked in the face by Mike Sillinger's son, and his knee was pointing east when it should have been pointing south. Like it was not pretty. I get why people like chasing this stuff down. For me, I just wait. I like being on the other side of the window and just waiting and hearing, and we'll go from there. But it's such a weird thing. And the last thing I'll note is, like, going back to that Buccigross thing when he said Brock Nelson to the Wild, right? It's like the worst kept secret in the NHL, right? That stuff. That's the stuff that rubs me the wrong way when people like him who have a platform, or some of the other professional liars, talk about the Islanders in that way, because you just don't know better than us. Like you just don't. You have no idea. This team operates so differently from any other team in the league and in professional sports that you have no idea that Brock Nelson has like 4 kids. They're in schools here. You think he's gonna want to uproot that worst kept secret? He's going around telling everyone, I'm going to Minnesota. My kids are crying at school because they have to say goodbye to their friends. Like this is it. That stuff, and people then take him at his word, right? So that's what pisses me off more than anything. I'll tell you what. I would take incarcerated Bob at his word 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000 before I take John Buccigross at his word.
Well, one guy has a track record that you could point to, and the other guy doesn't. The other guy is
honestly, like I would take Isles fan 67 on Twitter's just popping out of the woodwork with 37 Twitter followers, saying like, "Oh, I heard Nelson is signing an extension," more than I would ever trust what John Buccigross is saying. He's just trying to be the cool guy and get a rise and get the lulls from his friends from Cali.
I'll get to Nelson in a minute, but I just want to tie up Dobson real quick. A lot of the Dobson like kind of runaway trainness of this, again, people assuming that he's already gone and talking as if he's already been traded. It's a foregone conclusion. a lot of it is rooted in something we've talked about here, which is just a deep-seated hatred of Lou Lamoriello from people outside of the Islanders bubble. Now, there's plenty of Islanders fans who hate Lou Lamoriello too. And listen, you can criticize the man's decisions or non-decisions all you want. That's the gig, right? I mean, he knows that better than anybody. That's when you're a general manager. That's what it's all about. There were people protesting outside of the Mavericks game, the first game back after the Luka Doncic trade, and Anthony Davis had to like walk through those people to go to work, which is a little bit weird. I felt a little bad for him. But the thing about this is, it drives me a little crazy when people are just like, this is Lou being a piece of garbage. This is Lou being an idiot. This is Lou doesn't understand what he's talking about. People assuming that Lou is a guy who is this like, almost like a prison warden. Like he's like Strother Martin and Cool Hand Luke. Like he's, what we got here is a failure to communicate. And then he throws somebody in the hole that they have to sweat to death. Like it doesn't work that way. Again, this is the guy. And all I could think about, like, and I didn't want to engage. I'm not like an arguer. Like I don't want to engage people, even if they're my friends. I made the case. I was talking to a bunch of friends of mine about, Dobson hadn't really looked right in the last year or so. And I could see it being a possibility that he gets traded. What I didn't want to get into was like, Lou is the guy who helped Jordan Eberle move to Seattle by like calling the governor of Washington, right? Wasn't it something like that or whatever it was?
He got him. He could. Yeah. He like couldn't get a visa, so he called the governor of Washington.
Yeah,
he's a guy that Devon Taves like hugged.
Right.
They were like, "Oh, you got any salt? Right. You got any salt in the wound from Lou?" He's like, "No, I'm gonna give him a big hug when I see him."
Yeah, he's the guy. Josh Hosang loves Lou.
Love Lou.
Like it's just like it's so funny that the public perception of this guy versus the reality of this guy. You will never almost find a manager or a player or a coach anywhere that has anything bad to say about this guy. Barry Trotz, he got fired. Lou and I talk every week. Like I'm sure they kept talking through this whole thing. You don't think they've talked given the season that the Predators have? You don't think that Lou and Barry have talked? And Barry's like, I don't know what the hell's going on. And Lou's like, oh well, I don't know. I've had seasons like this too. Like
even Kyle Dubas,
right? Kyle Dubas,
my old friend, a really good friend of mine, used to tell me when you have time, you use it. Like
it's unreal.
It's misguided. It's so frustrating.
And so much of this is just born out of that. And it's just like you can't reason with that. They've decided to hate Lou. They've decided that he's already traded Noah Dobson. They've decided that they've lost the trade. They've lost the trade already.
No, it's Noah Dobson for Nick Delorier. LOL. Right. Like, oh, good one. Yeah, that's what Lou did.
Right.
And to that point, sorry to interrupt you. No. There was a really good point made by Dom, who goes by Golf Ops, who's got a great Twitter account on Golf Ops 1. He puts a lot of charts and stats up, and is one of the good chart slingers. Like if there's anyone that you trust to make to come out ahead in this trade, it'd be Lou. The Devon Taves trade didn't go well, but outside of that, every time he's made a transaction with another NHL team, it's worked out. Like it's worked out really well. So he's not. There's going to be this certain annoying community on Twitter that's going to convince you that Lou Lamoriello is trying to trade Noah Dobson for like a 33-year-old. Yeah, for like Steven Stamkos, right? Where that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah. Carson Soucy in an 8th round pick or something.
Yeah.
It would, it's like, meanwhile, if he was part of a trade that got like a marquee player, and I'm literally just throwing the Elias Pettersson name out there just because these guys have both been in rumors, then all of a sudden they'll find a reason to be like, I mean, you can find a Pettersson anywhere. Like, I don't know why you would trade this because Dobson is such a unicorn. Yeah, okay, man. So
way to buy high, Lou.
Yeah. Exactly. $11 million. I mean, you're gonna pay this guy $11 million. Like, you didn't have a problem when the Canucks were doing it. So there's a lot of annoyingness about this. And again, all I'm saying is I can see why it's a possibility, but I could also see Noah Dobson playing for the Islanders for the next 10 years. Speaking of playing for the Islanders continuously for the next 10 plus years, the other rumor in the mill out there is Brock Nelson signing an extension, which you talked about. Elliot Friedman did talk about this on the latest headlines thing. He's like, people are kind of calling the Islanders about Brock Nelson, but now it sounds like they might try and make an extension there. And then of course this gets into more sort of anti-Lou stuff. That's stupid. Why wouldn't you trade this guy? You can get so much back. And we've talked about this on the show before. Yeah, you could get a lot back for him. And yeah, the second line center is probably the single most frequently prized asset at every trade deadline. Like everybody wants that. Thank you very much, Butch Goring, for making that a whole thing. Like that's what everybody wants. And it really kind of settles your lineup in going into the playoffs. And I can totally get why the Islanders could probably get a lot for Brock Nelson, picks and prospects and such like that from teams that think they have what it takes to win the cup and are just a Brock Nelson or, a quality second line center, scorer, penalty killer, that kind of thing away from a cup. But the other side of that coin, and we kind of touched on this a tiny bit in the last half of this show, is that this is a man who has played for 12 years on the island. He is one of the highest scoring players in this team's franchise history. He's got whatever it is, 4 or 5 kids. All of them were born on Long Island, right? I don't know if his wife is from the island, but she's might as well be a Long Islander now, right? This is a man who has ingratiated himself and been a part of this community for his entire adult life. And if he wants to stay with the Islanders because he loves it here and it doesn't break their salary cap, which is going up, to like 90 something million next year, I think that's probably okay too. And I just find it very funny, again, the duality of this and the hypocrisy of this, where as if, a guy signs and wants to be a one jersey guy for a team that is at the cool kids table, that's okay. And if he's doing it for the Islanders, it's not, it's dumb. He's dumb for staying. They're dumb for not trading him. I get that he's old. I get that he's, probably not as good as he once was, although he's been okay this season, although he had that big slump. I get all of the different iterations. Again, the theme of this episode, right? Any result is possible. I get all of the considerations here. But if Brock Nelson says at the end of the day, I want to be an Islander, I want to play just for this one team, my kids are here, I love it here, I want to stay here, I want to help this team win here, and he signs for like a reasonable amount of money, it's gonna be very, very hard to be mad about not getting a bunch of picks or prospects or something like that. And I think it's kind of a beautiful story. But again, the guy playing for the team and the city and the community that he wants to play for, that story only gets so much traction outside of a few places. Toronto, Boston, Edmonton are like the top 3. Anybody signs with Boston and they're from Massachusetts or anywhere in New England, oh, what a great story this is. Somebody signs with the Islanders, what an idiot. What a stupid moron for wanting to stay on Long Island. Like, come on, man. And there's a few other places like that, but those are the top 3. Kind of like, right. This is a beautiful story and this man should be lauded for this. Meanwhile, if it was anybody else. So again, we have we could have no control over this. Right. Would it surprise you that after the tournament's over, or even in the middle of the tournament, Nelson signs an extension with the Islanders? No. Do I hope it's for too much? No, I hope it really isn't. I mean, I don't want them to give him too much because there is a salary cap in place here. But again, I would not be surprised if this man just wanted to stay. Why would he want to leave? I mean, he's got every reason in the world to stay.
The Islanders haven't been in this position in a couple of years where they have they're kind of like on the fringe of the playoff race with guys that would recoup a lot of assets. Yeah, they had Scott Mayfield and Cizikas as expired and Clutterbuck, Parisi, but like those guys weren't going to be. They were going to be like the Mayfield side, I guess. They were going to be like the bit part players that get traded at a deadline.
They have 2 quality UFAs and they're not like definitively in the playoffs.
And Nelson is like number 1 on everyone's wish list.
Sure.
Every fan base found out about Brock Nelson about 3 months ago, and now they all love the guy and he's number 1 on their wish list. I get it.
Right.
It's a good place to be in to have that kind of leverage. So I do understand why people think that the Islanders can get like a really big haul for Brock Nelson. But I want to let's just once again remind you what that would look like if the Islanders traded Brock Nelson to the Winnipeg Jets for a pick and a prospect, and maybe someone else like a young player, whatever what is it? An NHL ready player, a prospect, and a pick. That's always the package. That's what they're looking for. Here's huge news from TSN professional liar Darren Drager. Well, the New Jersey Devils are looking for a pick, a prospect, and an NHL ready player for Taylor Hall. Oh, thanks, man. I could have done that job myself.
Yeah.
But if just using the Jets as an example, if they're trying to get, Brad Lambert and a first round pick, and whatever, some random prospect for Brock Nelson, like that's probably the ceiling of it, and that pick will be 27th or 30th in the NHL draft. And I just pulled up the 2019 NHL draft, and I'm going to read you the names that were drafted from 19th. So I'm even going to give you a little more wiggle room on 19th or later in that draft, and you're going to hear some familiar names and some very unfamiliar names. Lassie Thompson, Ville Heinola, Samuel Poulin, Tobias Bjornfoot, Simon Holmstrom, Philip Tomasino, who is on the Renaissance painting now, Connor McMichael, Jacob Pelletier, Nolan Foote, Ryan Suzuki, Braden Tracy, Johnny Beecher, and Ryan Johnson.
I know some of those guys.
You heard of them, right? And I think Connor McMichael's having a good season, but it's fine. Like it took him a while to get going.
Pelletier just got traded to the Flyers.
Yes. He just got traded. I think Johnny Beecher's like an in and out of the lineup guy with the Bruins. Billy Heinola was supposed to be a good kind of pick for the Jets, but he's never come around. Lassie Thompson was like waived 6 times last year. But if you took that kind of close to a dozen players and you said, okay, well, Connor McMichael and Simon Holmstrom are probably your 2 best players. And look, Simon Holmstrom, he deserves more time from this show than he's getting because he's been playing really well and might be like he could really be a player. But if you ask me, do I want one of these players for 7 years under team control, or do I want Brock Nelson for the next 3? Going down the list, I think outside of McMichael and Holmstrom, you're saying I want Brock Nelson.
Yeah.
And hell, maybe you get lucky and you're the guy you're the team that drafts David Pastrnak 22nd overall or whatever, like, and that's fine. Liam Foudy was the 18th overall pick in 2018, right? Like it's more likely than not you're getting a Liam Foudy than a David Pastrnak.
Oliver Wahlstrom was 13th, right?
Yeah, him and Dobson back to back, and Adam Boquist was 8.
Right.
Like it's the point is, it's not like trading Brock Nelson is not a no-brainer, and keeping him is not a no-brainer. So however you feel about it is totally fine, and you can make arguments in either direction. But as you said, like, this is a guy who's 5th overall in the Islanders in games played. He's 5 games back of Bobby Nystrom to be 4th. He's 12 goals behind Clark Gillies for 4th most in franchise history, and only 18 behind Dennis Potvin for 3rd. Like, if Brock Nelson stays with the Islanders for one more season after this, in all likelihood, he becomes the 3rd highest goal scorer in the team's history,
which is insane.
Yeah,
it's going to be Bossy, Trottier, Nelson.
Right. Like Bossy, Trottier, Nelson. And in terms of points, he's only 14 behind legendary Josh Bailey. He's not all that far behind Brent Sutter and Tavares. Right. So if he sticks around for another season, he'd probably have those guys in his sights, and he'd be the 5th. And if he sticks there with this whole career, he'd be 4th behind Trottier, Bossy, and Potvin. Like, there is a legacy here, and I think that matters, and especially matters to a professional athlete, and there is some real romance to it. And if you were to ask me what would I rather, there's a huge difference between what should and rather. Like, what should the Islanders do? Got no idea. I'm not even going to try to guess. I have no clue what the Islanders should do in this situation. I don't know what the offers for Brock Nelson are like. I don't know anything about the draft coming up. I don't know anything. What would I rather? I'd rather Brock Nelson sign a contract extension. I wish he signed it yesterday while they're in Minnesota, just so I could drive to John Buccigross's office and give him the double middles, right? 2 birds. But it doesn't matter what I'd rather. Like, that's what I'm hoping for, because I'm a romantic. I want Brock Nelson to win a Stanley Cup with the Islanders, and it becomes impossible for him to do that if he's on the Winnipeg Jets. So that's how I feel on it. It's like the Dobson thing. It's just gonna be annoying and for until it's done, and it'll be annoying after that.
Real quick though, I had completely forgotten about Buccigross. The idea of Nelson signing an extension with the Islanders would be delicious, if only to have Buccigross have to backtrack on this. And again, we talked about it last week. If I was Lou Lamoriello or anybody, I would have gone absolutely bananas that this guy was on ESPN saying this kind of stuff. But he just like all these other guys, these professional liars that we talk about, there's no consequences to this. So John Buccigross can open his like Botox just for men, man who's too old to be in the club mouth, and say whatever he wants, because it doesn't matter. And if I were him, I would definitely not do any more Islanders games at UBS Arena if they're on ESPN this year. But I did like Nelson. Nelson to me seems like a sneaky, really funny guy with like a really acerbic sense of humor. But much like Garth Snow, who I always kind of got that sense from as well, he keeps that under wraps. Like he's not gonna, kind of let that out to the public. But I'm sure his teammates know. I'm sure his family knows and stuff. And I got the feeling from those quotes about him being like, well, I don't know what Bucci knows, but I'm telling you right now, I don't, I don't know what he's talking about. I think he probably wanted to say something else. But the other thing too, and we talked about this too, real quick, is that this idea that like Nelson had vocally said that he didn't want to re-sign with the Islanders was also BS. Like this was Pierre LeBrun wrote in a rumblings. I know he's still doing the rumblings thing, which makes me think that he's eating, some spicy Mexican food or something like that. That he believes that Nelson would test free agency. That's not Brock Nelson saying he wants to test free agency. That's one professional liar saying he thinks that this player wants to test free agency. That's absolutely nothing. And as we all know, there's no consequences for these people. They're professional liars. They can say whatever they want, and then they can be like, well, a lot's changed in the last 48 hours. Okay,
one
Pierre,
phone call.
Yeah, all it takes is one phone call. And Lou Lamoriello met with the agent in person in Minnesota, and they worked it all out. Okay, great. So basically everything you wrote was a lie, because that's why you're a professional liar. So there you go. So I guess the point of all this long half-hour discussion about Dobson and Nelson, and I'm sure Kyle Palmieri has kind of like managed to miss all of this, not that I'm wishing this upon him, but he's a guy who's also a free agent and could potentially get something back for the Islanders too. And the other thing too is, even if the Islanders do hang on to Nelson and Palmieri and whoever, it doesn't mean that they just sit with those guys and don't fix things. They still need to fix what needs to be fixed. This is still an extremely flawed team that we spent the first part of this episode talking about how many ways they could miss the playoffs. So they still need to fix things, but there is a scenario in which Brock Nelson staying with the Islanders is part of the solution rather than, getting rid of him is the part of the solution. Like there's a scenario where they can keep him, get some other players, and through other means that then help out. And, maybe he'll be 38 and playing on the fourth line when they get to be really, really good and maybe challenge for a Stanley Cup. But again, he might be the third highest scoring player in the team's history by that point. So, and his kids would be in high school. So, again, he's got a lot of reasons, I think, to stay. And as we've also known from watching this team for a long time, these guys have an absolutely unshakable belief in themselves. They will never, ever, ever doubt their own ability to do whatever. And that's how you get into a situation like this, where they've spent the first 3 months of the season farting around, and then all of a sudden they put up a playoff push that, to the outside observer, to the mathematical observer, seems like a bit of a long shot. But to those guys, they're right in it. Right. We get this and we're right back in it, because that's the way they think. And even Tony DeAngelo has been like, I've never seen a locker room like this, where these guys are so tight.
Right.
And they have such belief in themselves. So again, the theme of the episode, so many different ways that this can go, and doesn't necessarily mean that they're all bad. There could be some good ones here, but if your belief is trade Nelson tomorrow, I get it. I understand. And if they did, I would be sad, but we'll have to see what comes back. If your belief is sign the guy tomorrow, again, I think that makes a lot of sense too. So lots of different ways to go.
Yep.
You want to wrap it up? And
yeah. Well, I want to just say that the way you put it was perfectly. Like Brock Nelson can be part of the solution. I think that's a really good way to put it. So I don't have anything else to add on that. And the other thing is that I'm glad you brought up that piece about DeAngelo, because of the quote there that he said. And like, as we said already, I think Tony, you and I all look at the world very differently. But he said something in there that I was kind of hoping would stick with Islander fans, which is that he's like, all these guys have been Islanders their whole goddamn career. Yeah. Like, and he's like, he said it in a way, and I'm paraphrasing, and maybe I'm speaking for him, which is a very dangerous thing to do with this person. But it said it in almost like a almost jealous way. Almost like I think there's a lot of people around the league who probably see that and know Brock Nelson or know Anders Lee or whoever on the Islanders and are like, yeah, I'm kind of jealous. I kind of wish my team was like that. You don't think that the Toronto Maple Leafs and the fact that they have the team A and the team B that we hear about all the time, like there are players on that team we're like, kind of wish we just stuck together more and kept the guys together rather than having to rotate people in and out every season and fix players off of waivers because we've got these four guys at the top. that make all the money and suck
Right.
up all the oxygen. It was another reminder of just how once again the perception of this team from the outside and the inside are just so different from one another. The Islanders are looked as a pariah because of the way that they run their team and they build their roster and they keep guys together for long enough that they get engaged, married, have kids, and then name each other like the godparents of those kids. And then that's on the inside. Players look at that and are like, wow, that's the type of stability, especially when you're a little older and have more perspective, which D'Angelo is now like, 29, 30, and has been in hockey for a long time. Like, they realize that, and they're probably like, that would have been cool. Like, that would have been cool to be a guy who's just plays every season. He comes to play with the same guys, and they all buy into the same ethos. And Nelson said in that article, no, we run a pretty tight ship here. Hell, wouldn't you much rather have a tight ship than to have whatever the is going on in Vancouver or and the
right.
thing that happened with even though the Bruins situation seems like it was completely made up by some guy on radio,
Right.
but like those kind of situations, like this there's so much talk about the Bruins culture too.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like the Islanders, Paul Maurice came out again, being like, what a class act. I remember when Brady Tkachuk said it last season when Eric Brandstrom got hurt. I think it was Cal Clutterbuck hit him, and basically all the Islanders like checked on him after the game or something, and Tkachuk's like, that's why that room is so respected or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Listen to those people because they are actually in there. They're in the inside rather than the people who are slinging a chart at you and saying that Lou Lamoriello is a tyrant. So,
well, I still remember when Jim Montgomery and Sheldon Keefe during that first Trotz year were like, I wish we played more like the Islanders. Like I've never heard anybody say that. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. But that was just, because they play defense. But yeah, you're 100% right. It's the perceptions are different no matter where you go. And it's just, I don't know. It's really, it really is exhausting. And
next time you see somebody from, let's just throw Scott Wheeler out there. Not, not to be unfair, just first thing that came to my mind. But next time you see Scott Wheeler say something about the Islanders and the way they run and built and culture, etc., just pull up one of those quotes and be like,
yeah,
would I want to trust this guy, professional liar Scott Wheeler, or do I want to trust Paul Maurice, who just won the Stanley Cup and is like one of the winningest coaches in NHL history and universally lauded across the board right now?
Yeah,
just think about it that way.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, in terms of with Tony DeAngelo, like, this is a dude who's been on 4 teams before this, and like, you don't think he wanted he didn't want it. Nobody wants to be traded to 3 different teams and back to another team you want to play for. And so I think he probably respects these guys who have been here and worn one jersey. I remember when the Islanders had a captain that said he wanted to be a 1 jersey guy, and then he decided to be a 2 jersey guy. And I hope that one day he's a 3rd jersey guy, but that's a different story for a different time. Okay, we're gonna close it up here. We got a lot more coming up this week. We got our mailbag, so if you want to participate in that and hear that episode, sign up at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety for our country club tier. That lets you ask a question and hear the episode. I hope last week everybody enjoyed our quarter-century Weird Islanders teams. We got some feedback. Our friend John did a great piece of art. I totally forgot to send it over to you with team Al Montoya versus I forgot, what goalie did you pick?
Rollison.
Rollison. Yeah, so it was Rollison versus Montoya. It was actually very funny. So check it out. We had a good time doing that. And, I'm sure there's a lot of other Weird Islanders we forgot, but we had a good time making that one. So check that out. It's already out in the field. If you're listening to us on YouTube Music, again, it's doing its shit where it doesn't put our latest episode up there. I'm trying to fix it. The fix I normally do hasn't fixed it. So I don't know what's going on there. Don't use YouTube Music to listen to our podcast. Seriously. It's a mess over there. It's not my fault. I promise you. Our theme song is Morning Haze by Family Dinner. Listen to more of their music on Spotify. Check out their album, God Looks Out for Fools. Oh, yeah, duh. Of course, you can find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible.com, iHeartRadio, everywhere. Just don't use YouTube. Leave us a review, though, where you can, because we really do appreciate them. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day. For your up-to-date Islanders news and discussion, even during the 2-week break. Islanders Anxiety Podcast are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Shop VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. We thank you all for listening. We hope you enjoy the Four Nations Face-Off, or you enjoy the break, whatever you plan on doing. If you're going on vacation like these guys, have a great time. We'll be back next week with maybe a guest. We'll see what happens. But any final thoughts on either the Islanders leading up to the break itself and the Four Nations Face-Off, or the trade rumors that are no doubt going to swirl during these 2 weeks where the Islanders don't have any games?
No, I think we did a pretty good job here, but just a reminder that who knows what's going to happen, and it could go in a million different directions. And just to remember that none of us have ever heard of RG Media before, like 3 days ago. So
apparently, it stands for the Responsible Gambler. So
what? Oh,
yeah.
All right. Okay.
Who knew? There you go. Now we've learned something.
Well, okay.
But tis the season for trade rumors, so just be careful of where you're seeing them come from. But yes, there you go. We will see you again. We'll talk to you again next week. Take care and enjoy the games, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.